if they're not tracking the metrics, there's no point of a one-on-one. Like you can't really help them except give them motivation. That's it.
Yeah.
Like if you don't if there's no metrics, like there's nothing you can do but give them motivation. Like and motivation only takes you so far. But
Yeah.
data is gonna really show you like where they need to be at.
If you want to drive and if you want to be successful, welcome to VIPAs, the game plan call.
Today, a very special guest as we do every single week. We have Mr. Nicholas Quintana. Nico, good morning.
Morning, good morning.
How are you, sir?
I'm blessed. How are you?
I'm blessed. Thank you so much for asking, and thank you for blessing us with your time and your presence this morning. Um, you had a pretty big month last month. We kind of want to touch on that, but more importantly, the reason as to why we thought it'd be a great idea to have Nico sort of come up and, give us some of his time is to give everybody a little bit of understanding, an in-depth understanding of process, and, obviously a little bit about his story because, Nico's story is very unique because he's obviously relatively young, but more importantly, he's had his fair share of struggles when coming into this business. So for anybody who's new here, sort of understanding his story is going to be huge. He's also had to, you just recently got into like you were a manager before, but like you really became a manager like or a leader more per se like very recently in the past like say 6 months. Now you're leading other leaders on how to develop and grow as well. So a lot of fast growth in a very short period of time. But just if anyone has any questions, please have them prepared. We're gonna, like I said, we're gonna be delving into a lot of process based information here. But with no further ado, man, how are you?
I'm good, man. Yeah,
Fifty-six
pretty good.
thousand dollars in production last month, huh?
Uh,
Submit though.
Submits.
Submit. Okay. Waiting for the issue paid to come in. But
Yes, sir.
um that's a big deal. How old are you?
I just turned 21 4 days ago.
Yo, drop a happy birthday in the chat for Mr. Nicholas Quintana, man. 21 years old, huh? It's insane.
Yeah.
$56,000 in production at 21 years old. Opportunities are endless. Um, let's talk a little bit about this, just to give everyone a little bit of background as to what your story is like coming into this business. What were you kind of doing before getting into the insurance space? Um, were you at a different agency? Like, t talk a little bit about that, and then what brought you to VIPA and why?
Before I got into insurance, I used to work at the airport, like fresh out of high school. I had no plans to go to college or anything like that. So I was just like, I didn't really know what to do. I went to work at the airport for a little bit, and then one of my close friends, she used to door knock solar. So I wasn't really into sales like that. I just didn't really know about it. And then, yeah, I got into solar, started door knocking. It was pretty fun. I was doing B2B though. It wasn't residential. Thought it was pretty cool. I was getting paid a pretty good amount. Um, yeah, that's kind of how I started into sales. I already came from like a sports background and all that. So like rejection wasn't really, you know, a bad thing for me. Honestly, I thought it was pretty funny.
Mhm.
Just keep door knocking. My thing is like, how many doors can we get in a day or how many, people we can, at least give us our bill because we have to get like the comment bill and things like that. That was like my goal. And I honestly, it started, getting really easy then. But then I left. It was like a pyramid scheme. Just got screwed over. And then I had another friend who was working at, a practice company. And I didn't really know anything about life insurance. Keep in mind, I was like 19 at the time. I was just like, what's life insurance? I never heard of it until I actually started working. Like, I'd never seen the ad for life insurance, anything like that.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, when I first started, I just thought it was just like solar, like just get in front of as many people as possible. Send send in as many applications as possible. But not a lot of people really taught me the correct way. So I was
Mm,
signing up like 20, 25-year-olds, like $200 a month policies. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it right. But no one taught me better, right? I was just like selling. I was so good, like pretty good at selling. I was just like, yeah, like you need this, this is how much coverage you're gonna get, high amount. I wasn't really asking like affordability or anything. So I thought I made it at the time. And then those chargebacks started to hit,
mm,
those insufficient funds.
of course they
And
did.
then I was like, oh, oh snap. Um, yeah, and then I really, started to understand the business from there a little bit. Left the practice company about like a year and a half ago, right after you did. And then yeah, I've been here since. And then last year was probably, really a really tough year for me. Kind of got screwed over at the practice company, wasn't really making any money, and then had to learn the brokerage stuff. That took me like a good 6, 7 months to really understand, how the brokers work because it's a whole different ball game.
Hmm.
And then January is when I really like took this serious because I mean I didn't have nothing to lose. I was 20, I'm 20 at the time. So yeah, I just figured out like if you put money into this business, it's like it gets really easy once you understand the selling process, like just putting your money into the business. It's kind of like gambling in a weird way, but
Yeah, yeah.
you know you're gonna win every time.
Right,
But yeah,
right.
that's kind of how I got here, and yeah, I've been here since.
No doubt. You're taking a gamble on yourself though, right? And the thing is that you have the ability to put the odds in your favor, right? But in
Mhm.
order for you to get that, you obviously had to do like the learning and pay off your ignorance debt for you to be in the position today, to be able to be in the position that you are in today. Now, well, let me ask you this too. I always like to ask this, like, for people who are coming from practice companies as a whole, like there are so many other agencies out there, right? There's like hundreds. Why VIPA though? Like, why did you end up coming here? We're 100% virtual, no office space. 'Cause I know you were in office space before. So what was that like? What was that shift like for you?
Um, I mean, the reason why I came here, I didn't really take a look at any brokerages beforehand.
Hmm.
Um, I honestly just came here since I already knew you, and then I like the idea that we worked from home and stuff. So yeah, I just came here, didn't really do any research on anywhere else. I just you know, got the good word from you, put the trust in you, and yeah, it's kind of how I got here. I didn't really know much about VIPA or, Illuminate at all. I didn't know anything about the brokerage. I just came from the practice company, so I didn't know much at all. Um, that's what I was saying. It took me a few like months, like at least 6 months to really understand
Hmm.
like the brokerage stuff. So yes,
No,
that's how I got here.
that's huge, man. And you've had a tremendous
Yeah,
amount of growth since being here as well, right?
yes,
Um,
sir.
just to give everyone a little bit of idea, what like when you started here and you were obviously struggling a little bit, do you want to just like talk about the sequence and the growth of your numbers over time? Because that's the biggest thing. Like for most people who come into this business, people who are like new, people who've never worked sales before, it's kind of like a shock for them, right? Because the
Yeah.
biggest thing that everyone thinks is like when they come in this business, they're just gonna get it immediately and they're gonna see like infinite sort of returns as soon as they come in this business. When in reality, this is, as we already said it 100 times, right? This is a business. This is not a job, right? There is certain time frames that it takes for one to be able to understand, implement, and then obviously see the relative returns that they are sort of seeking to get when coming into an industry like this. So you want to touch a little bit about that just to give like, some of our newer folks an idea of what your growth was like coming here?
Yeah, so I mean, since I already came from like prior sales, it was like rejection wasn't, the hardest thing ever. Just learning the knowledge and like the products and everything like that, that was probably the hardest thing for me because I didn't know what to do. I remember when I first started, I had like Americo Mutual Omaha. Like I was trying to just sign up everyone through them. I didn't understand like the underwriting, or anything like that. But I would say biggest thing is, learn how to take rejection because if you don't, it'll drive yourself out of the business. And then yeah, you just have to, it's delayed gratification. Like you just have to, it's like going to school, right? You have to sit there and actually learn what you're doing and then, pra same thing as sports, like practice makes perfect.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, once you keep doing it, then eventually you're gonna get there, and it gets easier along the road. But that's why statistics show, I think they said like 92% of agents will make it past like the first 3 years or anything like that. I think it was something along the lines of that. But yeah, a lot of reasons why people quit is because they don't, actually take the time to actually try this. They
Hmm.
do it for, 3, 4, 5 months and then quit because they're not seeing anything. It's, like I said, it's like going to school. You're not going to be perfect your first year.
Right.
So I already understood that. So from that, I was just like, yeah, I'll just keep doing it. I was hitting slumps last year, and I remember one of my old mentors, he always said like the people who last in this business are gonna get paid. No matter if you're like messed up right now, you're not getting paid. If you just sit here and last in the business and just keep working, it's just gonna come eventually. So I always had that in the back of my mind. Like if you sit here and just wait and delay gratification and make sure that you're doing what you got to do, eventually it'll come to me. And then this year, eventually started coming. So
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah.
Dependent variable though, right? Dependent variable is doing what you got to do. What does that look like, right? We want to touch on that a little bit
Right.
more.
Okay.
And also
So,
like what numbers wise, like what from like last year. So when you got
uh-huh.
here, right, July, let's talk about your numbers from last year at the end of the year, and then going to like Q1 of this year and where we are right now.
I got it. So, yeah, last year, I remember my first month, I probably did like maybe like 4 or 5K. That was back in, I think it was July. I remember what's funny though is I remember my first appointment I closed, which is pretty cool, but it didn't stay on the books. But, um, yeah, that was pretty funny. But, yeah, first month was like 4. Second month, I think I did like 10, but not all of the issue paid. I was still understanding the issue pay versus AP because we don't really go off that at the practice company. So I just, I was trying to figure that out. And then, yeah, I would say from September to December, it was yeah, it was 4, 5, 6, and then 4.
In a month.
And yeah, in a month, 4. That's submit too as well. It's not issue paid. So that's how much I kept submitting. I was probably making like 1,000 to maybe 3,000
Hmm.
in a month.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's how it started last year. Because I was learning too. Like I didn't know much. I couldn't, write 10, 15,000. I didn't have the capital, but I had the time.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
yeah, that was the most important thing. Like I think you said that you only come in this business with, if you're going to come in this business with either a lot of time or a lot of money. And I didn't have a lot of money, so I came in here with a lot of time.
Hmm.
And I was working before we had the 2 hour break throughout the day. We were working from 8 to 1, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time, took an hour break, and then from 2 to 8. And that was for like the first 6 months here. I was working those hours. Like, I didn't, you can ask Ion, I never, left. I never took a break. I wasn't, I didn't go on any vacations, anything. I was just here every single day. So that's kind of how I got to where I'm at now.
Hmm. And then what? So first of all, I'm gonna say this too. That line was not my line. That's Amaker's line. He
Oh, yeah,
he
sorry.
trademarked that line. So he's gonna. So there's that. Now, what kind of change? So now going to January of this year, what? How did your numbers like reflect going into this year? Like from January to now. Let's look at that growth, and then I also want to figure out like lead strategy. We want to talk about schedule. We want to talk about mind frame, all that. But like, let's talk
Yeah.
those numbers first.
So January, I remember going, we had like the Christmas break. I wasn't happy where I was at, and I was just like, man, like I need to do something about this. So I put like my last like 600, yeah, like $500, $600 into leads. I bought my own leads. It was like some final
At least
expense leads.
final expense.
It
Okay.
was Facebook leads through the my CRM setter, Snell
Okay.
Goat Leads. But I put my last, bread to it. I didn't have anything, paid all my bills. I didn't really have much coming up. So I was just like, yeah, this year like, I have to change something. Like, I remember talking to myself like that the end of last year, I was like, this year, like I'm coming for revenge. Like this is the year where I start. So I put like yeah, like $600 into leads, and then from there, um I actually closed out of like 20 leads. I closed like 7 or 8 of them, which isn't bad.
Just
And then they gave me a refund. So they actually gave me more leads because I some of them are kind of messed up. So they gave me a whole nother pack for free. And I was working those, and I had Jacob saying too, he was working them, and we just kept closing them.
Mhm.
And and then from there, that's when I really started picking this up. I was like, wow, like once you start actually putting your money to the business, like it just gets super easy.
Mhm.
Like who ever thought, right? But yeah, from from there, once we started putting, our money into actually into the business, then I was actually like, wow, like let me see what 1,000 looks like to leads. Let me see what 2,000 looks like to leads. And then I think January I wrote like 27. It was the biggest month, at the brokerage, which is pretty cool. And then February I got on Collex a little bit, about a month. It was actually pretty good. Helped me in terms of income, but yeah, it was a really good platform. But I was still writing on the other end too. So I think I wrote like 29 in February, and then I was like, wow. So from there, I just kept putting money into leads. I stopped asking for, splits, everything like that. And then yeah, I just been on a roll since.
No doubt,
I think
man.
March, yeah.
March, what happened?
In March, I think that was my biggest. I think I did like 30,000. And then April and May. April went down to 27. May was like, yeah, I think it was around the same, 29 or 32. But I issue paid the most in May because of all the other months. Because here's the thing, since I'm writing like ethos, you're running into big terms. Like you're not getting paid right away. But
Hmm.
I'm okay with that. Like some people want to get paid right away, but with ethos, if you're writing like huge terms, like you're not going to get paid like maybe your first month.
Hmm.
So that's something I had to understand with that. I didn't know at first, but now that I've been running them for quite some time, like you need to like understand like if you're running into people with some money that want terms, like you're not going to get paid right away. So
No doubt.
um yeah. I wrote a lot, still issue paying, it comes back on like the second or third month. So
No doubt.
yeah.
That's the thing, right? And with the issue paid report as a whole, like just to give everyone an understanding of how it works, is like when you're first coming into this business, the issue paid report, it takes typically, and this is HD's words, not even mine, is like it takes about 90 days that you want to assume. Like 90 days of you writing consistently for you to start seeing that report start picking up over time, right? But now let me ask you this. You're mainly on ethos focused leads, right? Like ethos abandoned carts.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that, what your process is of how getting around that, all that. But like before we even move that far, like I want to understand this. You went from writing, not even being able to crack $5,000 in submitted production up until December of last year. And then in January, you did $27,000 submitted. Last month, you did $56,000 submitted. There's got to be some sort of like mental shift or something that happened there for you to be
Yeah.
able to get to that point. What really happened? Like, that you obviously started spending more money on leads, which is great.
Yep.
What kind of did you take any other actionable steps to be able to get yourself to that point, and then you do it consistently after that?
Yes. So not only did I, start buying more leads, I cut out all the vices like,
Hmm.
drinking, smoking, things like that. I've not done any of that since the first week of January. I haven't done anything. I feel like that helped a lot. And just keep working. I was spending so much time on Zoom. I was barely seeing my family and stuff like that. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just cut out all the vices, started putting money into the business and, just focusing on my mental, my health, very important. So from there, I was just, just locked in.
Dude, that's
Pretty
huge.
much it. Yeah, the first month after I stopped, I cut all the vices out. I think I wrote 27. So
That's
I went from 5K to 27.
right. No gimmick there. No gimmick
Yeah.
there. That's for sure, man. You know, it's interesting because like it, the mind is it's like not neglected, but it's something that we kind of push off majority of the time, right? Being in this business, being just in business in general, right? Like this business is very like hands-on, and it requires a lot of like, just constantly being on the phones, constantly, talking to people, constantly. It can be draining, and sometimes we forget like, hey, we're not chasing a check, right? We're trying to make sure that we actually are protecting these families, but we need to make sure that we are protected. We're taking care of ourselves so that way we can take care of other people, right? Because if push comes to shove, right, the entire grid shuts down. We have our two legs. We have our phones, but we also have paper, we have pen, right? We can go knock doors, we can go fill out applications, we can mail them in, right? We can still get clients approved, but if this is not in check, this is the most expensive asset that we have. Before leads, before the phone, before anything, right? If this thing, our brain and our mouth, this is the most expensive assets that we have. We have got to protect these at all times, right? Because at least we can speak to people. At least we can convey a message, right? So if this thing is clouded, if this thing isn't being taken care of, well then of course everything around us is going to implode. It's not going to work, right? And it's actually insane to see that because like that's real data. That's real data to prove that like letting go of all those vices, letting go of all those bad habits can contribute to your overall development. So that's huge, man. Now,
Also,
but I want to go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say also speaking of data, one thing I started at the beginning of this year is actually tracking everything. So
Okay.
calls, contacts, scheduled sit sales. That helps a lot because you can go back on the previous months and oh, also tracking how much you spent on leads.
Mm-hmm.
Because then if you go back, maybe you're having like a slump 1 month. You're like, man, like what did I do that 1 month when I was dropping like 30,000? And then just go back to those metrics and see how much you spent on leads and how much your call, contact, schedules, and sits to sales were.
Can you can you
Um,
can you kind of show us? Do you like have anything to show us?
yeah, I could show you like the most recent one
Yeah, if you
here.
don't mind. Like your maybe your month of May report.
So with SureHelp, it's kind of like mixed, but this is what I have so far for the month of May. So um, calls 2,700, contacts, scheduled sits to sales, and then
That's
AP. Um, so my schedule to sits, something you need to work on, but with Ethos, you're having a lot of like reschedules, so it's not like you know y- too terrible with it. And then your call to sits, so 173. What else is important here? My AP per sale is 3,200, which is pretty crazy. I don't think that's true, but I mean that's just an average because I'm writing like a lot of like underwritten terms and stuff like that. And then my assist to sale ratio is 62%, which is pretty good. And then yeah, scheduled assists 29% can get that up a little more.
Mhm.
But yeah, if you just look at all this stuff here, it actually helps. So
No doubt. And that kind of helps you what like gauge, how many more maybe you need to do a little bit more dials. Maybe you need to call people at different times of the day because your contacts are
yeah,
lower.
yeah.
Maybe you need to be a little bit more intentful when it comes to scheduling your appointments so that way they can show up more, right? But this is huge. This is what all the top producers within our organization are doing, man. So I mean, no doubt that, you're in the position that you're in from doing this. Now let's talk a little bit about routine too, right? We want to get into lead strategy as well. But let's talk about routine. So like walk us in the day of the life of Nico, right? Because I know you're big on mind frame. You're big on, we're big on that too, right? Let's talk a little bit about that and how you've been able to develop in that regard.
So when the beginning of this year, I was having trouble like figuring out a routine because um I had like a health issue last year and then pushing back from the gym for like 2, 3 months. So I started slowly getting back into the gym. At least try to go like 3, 4 times a week. But in the morning, I'll try to wake up like an hour and a half before, when we start, just, clear my mind. Because if you wake up like 10 minutes before, we go off schedule. I don't know about anybody else, but we start at 8:30 every day. So like if you're getting up 10 minutes before 8:30, your mind isn't, you're not fully awake to really understand things. Like that's why people forget a lot of stuff, in the morning because you're not really understanding. You just woke up. So I try to wake up like an hour and a half before, then, take a shower, eat, maybe do a quick workout. and then yeah, that's how it is in the morning. You do just a quick little training, and then from 9 a.m. to 1, I'm just straight hammering the phones. Like I don't stop. I'm unmuted every single day. My camera's always on. I'm just working. Everyone that comes in my room, they'll hear me. So that's what I do from in the morning, and then I used to take breaks, but now I don't. I try not to because I'm actually during the break times, I'm closing. Like my last like five, six closes, like at least like three or four of them are like in between the 1 to 2 p.m. time central. So yeah, I try to stay away from, break. If I do, maybe take like a 30-minute break. But yeah, I'm just working. And then from 4 to 8, working all day. Because in the morning, you gotta think about it. People are getting up for work, getting ready to go to work, things like that. You call them, book out an appointment, evening or throughout the day. You can, get on sits or do underwriting. That's very important, especially since I write a lot of term. Got to do a bunch of underwriting, and then from there, the evening, you're always set up for the sale.
Hmm.
So it's very important to work on the client schedule. It's not, you're not gonna do good in the business if you don't, work on the client schedule. If you're just showing up when you want to, like respectfully, it's not really gonna work.
Not at all.
Like that's how I'm able to do what I do, just because I go based off the client schedule. I'm not going off my schedule when I want to work.
Hmm.
So that's kind of how, my routine is from Monday through Saturday. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, of course, right? I mean, you're working like that. Well, you're working like 12, 16 hours a day, dude. That's
yeah.
insane. But like, obviously, you must have a super strong why. You must have a super strong mission. But I'm sure that you have to like take some time to yourself. Like, where is like the Nico time, right? Like,
So
what are you doing like off the field, basically? Like, what kind of work are you doing
yeah.
off the field for you to be successful on the field?
Yeah, I get it. So, what I'm doing, so my biggest why is, I mean, I'm really young. I don't have nothing to lose. Like, I don't want to be, 30, 40 years old, with children, trying to figure this out when I'm still very young. Get it all set up now, just work hard now, cut out all the vices and then, be able to relax more when I'm, a little bit older. So, uh, but yeah, I would say, one thing that's been helping me is just going to the gym and trying to go to church. I know I slack with it a lot, but your mind, body, and spirit is very important. So yeah, just doing that out of work, taking care of my dog, um, girlfriend, things like that. So uh, yeah, just stick to myself. I don't really, do too much. I don't go out. I don't party. I don't really do too much.
Yep.
Yeah, just strictly business. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done here. Like, yeah, I'm writing decent amount of business, but at the same time, like I want to write as much as and issue pay the same month. So like
Mhm.
that's something I'm figuring out right now. And then plus I have a team. I'm growing. My managers are Mario and Jacob. They're slowly becoming, product product of me. So it's like, yeah, I just want to make sure like we're able to scale and make sure that biggest thing is making sure that we our foundation is really strong from the beginning
Mhm.
because I don't want, I came from, the practice company. I had like 13 agents, they all fell off. So I just want to make sure that that doesn't happen again. So taking care of everyone, helping everyone when I can, biggest thing here.
Mhm. No doubt, man. No doubt.
Yep.
You talked a little bit about having you have a girlfriend too, right?
Yeah.
That's beautiful, right? I know she's damn happy for sure, right? Dude's raking in the bucks for sure. I hope you're taking her shopping here and there. But what kind of so I was talking to Leighton about this earlier too, and since a few other people who are in relationships. And obviously, we know that this business is super time consuming. We've even had like couples within our organization come and like speak about what kind of conversations need to be had within the household in order
Yeah.
for whoever's in this business to be successful, right? So, like,
Right.
what kind of conversations, I mean, are you like having with the men? First of all, how long you guys been together, if you don't mind me asking? You don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
Probably like,
Probably like it's crazy.
no, since high school almost. So it's been like 3, 4 years.
Okay, okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
And what kind of conversations that you guys had? Did she ever like, oh, you're working too much or anything like that?
Not really, because I kind of had her like sold on the vision in the beginning, because I
Mm,
was kind of already doing doing the same thing at the practice company. Plus, I was door knocking at first. I used to be gone all day, but I just understood in this business like there's so much money to make, and if your spouse or girlfriend, whoever understands that, then it shouldn't be an issue in terms of work. I know it's probably sucks for them. Even sucks for her too. Like, I'm working, 12, 16 hours and, don't have as much time, but the time I do have has to be very important. But they have to understand, like, you know, there's a lot that needs to be done in this business. If you want to be successful and, if you want to retire early, have a lot of money, passive income, it starts now. So, yeah, I think she understands that fully. She's in the business as well now too. She's starting to
mm.
understand it. So if you bring your lady into this business, like it's just gonna be even better. But sometimes, you have to understand how they work because it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, you know.
Right, right.
But if they're bought on the vision, like yeah, you'll be good. Just make sure that they understand in the beginning. If they don't like it, then probably not for you because
Yeah.
it's just not going to work out. But
No,
yeah, if they need to understand that in the beginning, if you guys want a healthy relationship, because you don't want your girl being like, yeah, you're working too much, things like that. But that's just what it takes right now, at least for us, like people in their 20s for sure. But yeah,
yeah, man, no doubt. As I say, family and friends is like it's dangerous, dangerous bringing them into the business,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it
But
is.
you
It's
know,
very dangerous. Yep.
but if you can obviously have those kind of tough conversations at the beginning, then it's like a lead, right? Like if you run the sit correctly, you get all the objections out the way in the beginning, right? And don't ever say this to her because, if you ever try and compare a woman to like a business transaction, they're gonna lose their mind. But respectfully, shout out all the beautiful women in this world. But regardless though, uh it's very important. You got to have those kind of conversations. You get the objections out the way in the beginning, and that way the ecosystem within the household is there. Now, let's talk about this though. You talked about routine. You talked about your story. Now let's talk about like your leads, right? When you started making consistent sales back in January, what were like two or three lead types that you mastered, and how did you approach them differently than like other leads? Because you're super versatile from what you've
Yeah,
said. You
yeah.
said you call ethos. You said you call it FEX. Talk a little bit about that. What's your lead strategy? How are you going about calling them, times of the day, all that.
Yeah, so I mean, let's start off with last year. So I was calling MP for 8 months straight. I didn't
Right.
have any CRM, no power dialer, or I had like Kixie. I was using that towards the end, but I was calling Age Mortgage for 6 to 8 months straight. I feel like calling that helped me a lot in terms of like consulting because if you came from the practice company, like you were just taught to sell, sell, sell. You weren't taught to like really understand what the client needs. So like I feel like going through that first 6, 7 months was really helped me, in terms of getting higher intent leads.
What's the
But
difference though? Sorry, I'm going to cut you off, but like, what's the difference between consulting and sales? What's the difference in questions that are being asked? Just to give everyone a little bit more clarity on like the definition of that.
yeah, instead of like saying, hey, we're gonna start you off with this, or we're gonna start off with option one and you can always get more down the road, whatever the case is. Like always in the beginning, what I always ask is like, is this your first time shopping for life insurance? Have you done this before? Always end off on a question. Because if you're just talking more than asking, then you know you're kind of like losing the sale there. Like you have to ask them questions. Like they literally sell themselves if you just ask them questions the whole entire sit. So that's what I understood. After like really understanding this business as a whole, like just asking them questions just sells themselves. So I always ask like questions like, what made you get this? Was there a specific reason why you wanted a term, or why did you need this much coverage? Like, do you actually need it? I've actually downsold people because they're like, yeah, I just want $1 million in coverage. I'll just be like, yeah, like, why do you need $1 million? He's like, oh, I don't know. Okay, are you trying to protect an asset, cover funeral costs, things like that? He's like, yeah, I just have a mortgage. I was like, okay, cool. How much is your mortgage? He said 450,000. I was like, yeah, man, you don't need that. I was like, let's just do 450,000 of a 20-year term since you have 19 years left. I think that makes more sense to you. And then instead of, just telling him, hey, like, yeah, let's get the million, I consulted him And now it's still on the books because it made sense to them, and I helped them save some money. So yeah,
Mhm.
things like that, like that's something that helps a lot.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that's huge, man. That's huge. And I think it gives everyone a little bit of a general understanding between the key differences, right? Because
yeah.
consulting is what stays in the books. Consulting is what builds the relationship, right? Sales, on the other hand, well, see, th this is the key difference, right, between our niche business compared to like any other sales industry as a whole, right? Like if you're a salesperson like a car dealership, that's a salesperson, right? They don't most of the time those guys are not consulting. Personal experience. Um, if you are working at a car dealership, someone tells you they can't afford this car. You can think of 100 million things to do to get them around that objection. As long as they sign that paperwork, that credit app is filled out and sent off. They drive that car off the lot. You get paid as a salesperson. If they default on those payments, that car will be taken from the bank. You still get to keep your money. Here, we are forced in a position where we genuinely have to do what is in the client's best interest. So, us going and pushing clients to be to close a policy, to close an app, that's only going to come back to hurt us. People are gonna, business is gonna charge back. Your reputation is number one in this business. Your reputation in our agency, and then your reputation with the client, right? Number one thing. So, I'm glad that
Mhm.
you be able to understand that at such a young age as well. It's huge. But let's talk like I said, so let's go back to the lead strategy as a whole. So, like, what kind of leads are you currently calling? What kind of lead types would you recommend? Like, let's talk a little bit about that. What kind of successes
Okay.
have you seen with
So
different lead types?
yeah, beginning of the month, or beginning of the year, I started on Facebook leads. I bought my own through my CRM center. That's where I really started. And then I just wanted higher intent leads. Like I was calling age for so long, I was like, yeah, let's just start off with these. Actually close a decent amount. And then I was running that for a few weeks, did pretty well on it. And then from there,
What's
I
the dem
jumped from,
I'm going to cut you off.
go ahead.
What's the demographic that you're calling? What's the
So
cost for the kind of leads that you're getting? What kind of leads are they?
So their final expense lead, so a typical final expense lead is like 60 to 80-year-old, like, just funeral final expenses, burial insurance. That was like a type of demographic. Veterans as well. That was all in the same range.
Mhm.
It's around like $20 a lead.
Mhm.
I only had 20 leads and I spent, or yeah, actually no, I had 30 leads. So I spent like 600. So if I didn't make, nothing work with 300 or 30 leads, I was screwed. So yeah, I just really worked them hard
Mhm.
and speed to lead with those leads. So Facebook leads, like the live drip leads,
Mhm.
yeah, you have to call those right away. Like I had some dripping in like Saturday and Sunday. Like once it came in, I was dialing it because I know, like usually with those type of leads, if you don't call it the same day or the same hour, that you guys got to understand how many people click a Facebook ad. So like people click multiple Facebook ads in one day. So if you didn't sell them, someone else did. Because that's happened to me before. Like I waited a day to call him. I called the guy and he's like, yeah, someone already called me. I already got the insurance. I'm good. So yeah, with the Facebook leads, it's speed to lead. Like no matter where you are, at least answer them, book an appointment or something. Usually with the Facebook leads, it's one call closes from what I've seen. Uh, Booking appointments with them gives you a hard time unless they're, genuinely interested. But yeah, with those one call close, 60 to 80 years old, vets, burial, things like that. And then from there, so beginning of February, I had an opportunity to go on CallX, amazing platform. From there, that really helped me in terms of like the consulting part really helped me a ton. Like the way the script was, everything was put together. Like it helped me. Like I still use like stuff from CallX on regular day-to-day, you know, sales and stuff like that. But yeah, CallX was nice because I just went on straight appointments and, doing a lot of consulting. And I thought it was pretty cool. It was kind of like Facebook leads, except that they're just calling you. And then I couldn't do that for too long, so obviously I had a team. It's based off and schedule and things like that. So after that, Eamon, he's the one who kind of introduced us, the ethos cards. I think it was like mid-February or March. I know people were talking about them in the past, but I didn't really see many people running them. And then yeah, I was like, screw it, like I'll try some. And then from there, it was really easy. I mean, it wasn't really easy. It was just like since I came off of like Facebook leads and CallX, I just thought it was like the lead was so easy to convert. Like all they do is click on an ad. They fill out the application themselves, and a lot of the times, like I just run into people, they're just busy. They just forget to fill it out. They forget to, you know, they don't really know how to answer the questions too. Sometimes that's what I figured out, or they can't qualify, or having trouble with the bank. Like I ran into all of those, and they're really easy. It's a consulting sale.
Mhm.
That's why I like them so much. Like
Mhm.
one time, I had a guy that literally didn't know how to put in his banking, and that's it. I just put in his banking for him and got paid. It was like a 10-minute sale. So, yeah,
Insane. Okay. Now, okay, so now obviously you have a system, right? You have to have a system to be able to do this. Now, ethos leads.
yeah.
Average demographic is what? Like, same thing. Average
So
demographic.
average demographic for ethos leads, it's anywhere from like 25 to 60 years old from what I've seen. The youngest person I had was like 20, but
Wow.
I would say like average is like 25 to 60. Like
Okay.
mid 40s and 50s where you're going to see a lot, but I've had people as high as 60 and low as 20. So, that's like the average demographic. And then majority of the people, it's kind of like if you guys ever got released off Age Mortgage, you ever seen um that graph of like the 18 to 40 graphs and then 50 to 60 like the whole life and term. It's kind of the same thing with that. So usually with younger people, you're only doing terms. Unless they generally know what whole life is, you're only selling terms. It's smaller sale, but since it's really cheap. But yeah, with those, you're only running terms. So get familiar with all the term products. And usually with, I would say 40 or 30, 40, 50 year olds, IULs, still terms or, big whole lives. So that's something you're going to run into as well. And then 60, I mean, I even sold 60-year-old terms. So it depends. Like you got to be really versatile with all three products. So IUL terms, whole life.
Mhm.
Because sometimes people are like, yeah, I just want $1 million in covers. They don't even know what it is. So
Mhm.
you got to break it down. Sometimes people like the IUL, some people like the term, some people like the whole life.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, you have to be versatile in all three. So that's
Mhm.
why I felt like I was doing pretty well because just from all the past lead sources I ran, I already knew how to pitch mortgage protection. I already knew how to pitch final expense. And then IULs, I started getting really good at it just after, learning it. So, um, yeah, that's kind of the thing. You got to be versatile in all three
Yeah.
because sometimes you're gonna run into a 20-year-old that, maybe has type 1 diabetes. They're born with it. They can't get, whole lot, or they can't get a term. So you have to pivot. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
it's a sale you can pivot, which is good.
Right. Every time. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Now, okay, and then that's important, right? So you obviously proven to be versatile. You've been able to target each demographic. You also been able to find like what everyone is looking for when they first come into this business, which is a lead strategy, right? Like the first thing that everyone, because sometimes, MP is great, but although it might be for some people, it also might not be for some people. It might be for, they might do better on FEX, or they might do better on ethos leads, or they might be doing better on something else, right? There's different strokes for different folks. Now, I also want to talk about spend, right? Because that's the number one thing, right? You touched on that a lot in this conversation. And we talk about it a lot with top producers in general. I think we had Amaker, Ryan, and Usman and Elijah come on like a few months ago, and they talked about how each of them are averaging like a 6 to 8K spend a month. So like, what would you say is like your average spend and like average like ROI based off of what you're spending and what are you spending money on? Like, let's talk about your system that correlates
Yeah.
to the actual schedule, so people have like full and clear understanding of what needs to be put in place in order for them to get to a position like yourself.
Yeah. So I would say, biggest thing is, if you don't have the CRM power dollar, might not help you out as much. But you can still hand out, which is good. But I would obviously have some money put aside for a CRM and a power dollar if you can. If you don't, I would say start off with at least 1,000 to 2,000 a month and spend because you can easily get that to, if you know how to sell, you can easily get to like 5 to 6K. And then from there, start putting, 2,500 or 3,000. I used to do it week by week. So I used to put like 1,000 a week. Then I started doing 2,000 a week. Um, and then from there, it just compounds. And then I think beginning of May, I did my first, I was scared to do this, but I know Nielsen, Ion, they're like, yeah, just put 6,000 up front. I was like, what? So I was like, all right, cool. Like whatever. I don't have nothing to lose. So I put 6,000 up front beginning of May, and I issued paid the most. I think it was like 23,000. And I was like, wow, I'll just do that again. And I did it this month, 6,000 up front. That's something once you start like understanding, your lead costs and things like that, I would say put everything up front beginning of the month because you think about it, you still got to issue pay everything, underwriting, things like that. You'll have it all by the end of the month if you put your draft dates out to like the 15th, 20th, 28th, and then you just rinse it, or do it again. And then eventually from 6,000, you'll go to 8,000, 8,000 to 10, 10 to 12. I know for a fact people that are spending 10 to 12 grand a month are writing at least 50 to 70 consistently.
Hmm.
Like no doubt.
Hmm.
Like there's no cheat code. You just have to put in like the more money you put in, the more you get out, especially if you know how to sell. If you know how to sell insurance, you should not be scared to put the money into the business. So that's something I learned. I was like, okay, cool. Like I know how to sell insurance. I know if I buy all these leads, there's no way I don't close. So that's kind of the mindset I had.
No doubt, dude, and that's important. I appreciate you even touching on that, right? Because like efficiency is everything. Everything has to align, right? Like this is these are the foundational pieces, right? Obviously, you have the schedule. That's the binder, right? That's the dependent variable. Then you've obviously been someone who has done your fair share of hand dialing, but you made your system a little bit more efficient by leveraging the CRM, the power
Mm,
dialers, also the workflows that are used in the CRM and the campaigns that are used. I mean, how much of your
yeah,
time would you say that you're
campaigns.
spending on texting too?
Not much. I mean,
Really? Okay.
I obviously have the campaign sent out. Oh, that's another thing I forgot to touch on. So usually with the ethos cards, I usually try to call them at least 6 times individually. So each lead I call 6 times. I don't count double dials, 6 times individually throughout a 6-day time period. And then from there, I'll do the campaign the following week. So it's kind of like I'm rinsing it again because I get people that never pick up the call, but they'll pick up the campaign. And I have people that never answer the text that picks up the phone. And then I have
Hmm.
people that, tell me to email them and they only answer off emails. So you need like 3 points of contact.
Hmm.
So that's something I understood with this lead. And, I make sure I email them, I make sure I text, and I make sure I call them. And that's why I'm getting so much from these leads.
Hmm. No doubt, dude.
But
There's
yeah,
no way milking them into oblivion. Right? You
yep,
have to be able to, right? Point of contact is everything. Fortunate is in the follow-up. That's the truth. And I appreciate you for sort of highlighting that. Now, I kind of also want to switch it into this, right? Because we have a lot of leaders or managers on our team or people who want to be, in a leadership role within our organization, right? You are someone who's had your fair share of, struggles on that end, right? You said that you've lost a 13-person team at the practice company. Kind of want to, finish up with that, right? Like what exactly conspired in order for that to happen? And then what systems or like habits helped you transition from being a top producer to someone who can like grow and lead a team, most importantly.
so I would just say biggest thing is make sure every agent's taken care of. That's one thing I was lacking in the beginning. Like I was just worried about my own production and things. But if you guys want to like create a bit or scale, you got to make sure everyone else is accounted for. Like do one-on-ones weekly, check in, get them leads if you can. Just find out what's better for, your agent. Maybe and figure out excuse me, what's the best lead strategy for your agent. Some people might not be good at NP, but they kill Facebook. Like you need to understand things like that as well. Like make sure, their at home life is good. Make sure everything, you know, in terms of helping them out, it's perfect because that's something I lacked in at the other company. I was just saying, yeah, just get on the phone and call. But now, you run one-on-ones, we're checking their KPIs every single, one-on-one, checking the IP reports, figuring out where the holes are in the game because if they're not tracking, any of their metrics, you can't really help them. So you need to make sure all your new agents are tracking their metrics. If they're not tracking the metrics, there's no point of a one-on-one. Like you can't really help them except give them motivation. That's it.
Yeah.
Like if you don't if there's no metrics, like there's nothing you can do but give them motivation. Like and motivation only takes you so far. But
Mm.
data is gonna really show you like where they need to be at. Like if you show someone their own data, they're gonna be like, oh snap, like that makes sense. Instead of like trying to motivate them to yeah, man, like you got this, just keep dialing, things like that. Like it'll come. But if you just talk about straight data and numbers based off their performance, they're gonna be like, oh snap, like I actually if I do this a little more, this is gonna contribute to the schedules and the sits to sales. So yeah, that's
Hmm.
the biggest thing that I never did at the practice company, which I feel like a lot of
Hmm.
people like Jacob, Mario, Jose, Xavier, like they're all starting to get it now. Like it's just numbers game. It's not about motivation. There's no emotions. That's another thing too. Like emotion, don't be emotional in this business, or else it's gonna screw you. Like that's something I learned like early on, but a lot of new agents that actually never been into like high ticket sales they get they might get super emotional. Like you just gotta, teach them to not be emotional in this business. I know it's kind of hard at first.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, you have to set the example. Like I'm never emotional in this business. Like, I'm always here. I've had a 10 appointment day with zero sales. Like it happens, right? I think the other
that's
day
crazy.
last week, yeah, I called
Yeah,
1,200, I did 1,200 dials in a day off the power dialer. Single dial. Well, it was a triple dial, but one at a time. But still, 1,200 dials in a day and zero sales. Like it
mm,
happens. So like
yeah,
that's the thing. If you take the emotion out of this business, like it's gonna take you so much more farther too, especially for newer agents.
no
Like
doubt.
it happens
No,
to
that's
top
a
producers all the time. So
yeah, yeah. Everybody, no one is free from that, right?
yep.
No one is free from that. Everyone gets that punch in the mouth and that humbling experience here and there. Like absolutely, you hit it on the nail, bro. Like when you first come into this business, that is the number one thing for you to muster up. It's such an interesting dynamic, though, right? Like the dynamic between being in a business that requires you to be emotionally sound when it comes to conveying a message to clients, but then also at the same time not being emotional in their reaction, right? Whatever if they say no or they hang up on you, you have to be unemotional, but you have to turn that on when it comes to making sure that they're okay, right? Very interesting dynamic, but no, that's super important though, man, and I'm glad that you've been able. How many agents do you have now?
Technically I have like 12, but
Okay,
8 of them are writing.
okay,
So
cool, cool. We got to get the other four writing, that's for sure.
yep.
And then what do you say, like how do you hold your team like accountable without losing their trust or or the motivational piece which you explained?
Um, I would say a way I can hold them accountable is just data. Like I said, like there's some people on the team that are like, hey, you know, I'm doing XYZ, but it's not working. Okay, show me your numbers. I would say data is the biggest thing, for like holding people accountable. Like, I mean, in my opinion, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I would say
Mhm.
data is the biggest thing is
That's true.
just holding people accountable. Like you can't cheat data. Like
Mhm.
it's not going to work. So if you go off of people's data and making sure they're tracking their numbers, like the only thing they're cheating is themselves, or they generally just don't want to be in the business if they don't want to get better.
Right, right,
But yeah, I would say biggest thing is yeah, just data and making sure everyone's accounted for.
right. And you also have to do it too, though, right?
Yeah,
Because like
yeah.
you can't expect from your agents if you aren't showing up like every single day and you're not putting in the work and your metrics aren't the standard, right? Rather than holding people accountable, like that's the standard, right?
That's the thing too. Like I never recruited anyone in this business based off like cars, jewelry, you know, checks, nothing like that. I was just real with everyone. I was just like, yeah, like this business, there's essentially a cheat code to this, and it's all off data. Like if you have all the data, like you're gonna be successful.
Hmm. No
But yeah,
doubt.
I never recruited anyone off any like liabilities or anything like that. It's just all been off being real and data. That's it.
Hmm. No doubt. I think we're going to wrap this up here. One last question before we start taking on questions from everyone else. What would you tell like your day one self now that you've built, like what you've built and what you're continuing to building?
I would just tell my day one self to, I think, put my money in the in better places
Mm,
because last year, like if I had my money in the right places last year, I would have been way more successful right now. I would just say
mm,
putting my money in way better places and like using it, wisely, not, going to, steak dinners all the time. And, that's what they teach you at the practice company, get designer, all that stuff. If I put
mm,
all that money into like leads, CRMs, things like that, I would have probably doubled of what I did, this month. So,
mm.
yeah, I would say one thing I could tell my day one self is just putting your money in the right places. Um, yeah, that's the biggest thing, man. And leveraging my credit way better. So,
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's for sure, man. But you gotta lose a couple thousand before you can make a couple hundred thousand. You gotta lose a couple hundred thousand before you can make a million, and so on and so forth, right? But no doubt, I think everyone can attest to that. But other than that, man, I appreciate you greatly for joining us today. I think we're gonna open it up for questions, and yeah, dude, thank you so much for your time, dog. It's amazing. I think it was super insightful for everyone. You gave everyone the kind of information they needed. So we'll see how this reflects in performance.
yeah, thank you.